Chapter 4. The Weight of a Promise. The moment his massive frame towered over her, her instincts screamed to run. Yet her trembling body stayed rooted to the ground, clutching the frail pup tighter against her chest. His growl rumbled low, not in anger, but in disbelief, his eyes fixed on the small bulge beneath her shirt. When the alpha finally shifted back into human form, he stood tall and commanding, his dark hair wild and eyes burning with a mixture of fury and hope. He didn't look at her as an enemy. He looked at her as though she carried something sacred, something that had been torn away from him. "Give me the child," he ordered, his voice deep, roughened with restrained emotion. Her entire body shook. Her wolf whimpered inside, urging her to submit to the overwhelming authority radiating from him, but her heart screamed louder. She shook her head violently, her arms tightening around the pup. "No!" Her voice cracked, but her resolve did not. "I don't know who you are. You say he's yours, but I don't know that. Maybe you are the alpha here, but you are not my alpha. You can kill me if you wish, but this pup stays with me until he opens his eyes and tells me himself that you're his father." The border warriors around them stiffened, their eyes widening at her defiance. A rogue, an Omega at that, daring to speak against their alpha. But the alpha did not strike. He didn't roar. Instead, his eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, as he studied her trembling frame. She was weak, fragile, but her arms around the pup were steady, fierce. After a long silence, he simply asked, "Can you walk?" Her lips parted, confused by his calmness, but she nodded slowly. "I can." "Then we walk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He dismissed the warriors with a wave of his hand and fell into step beside her. The trek toward the heart of the pack was slow, agonizingly slow, but he never rushed her. Every few steps, her knees threatened to buckle. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her wolf straining just to keep her upright. Yet the alpha matched her pace, unbothered, as though her halting steps dictated the entire rhythm of their journey. By the time they reached the pack's medical hall, her vision blurred with exhaustion. She swayed, nearly collapsing as the scent of herbs and clean linen filled her senses. Nurses hurried forward, and she reluctantly passed the limp pup into their waiting arms. "Please, please take care of him," she whispered hoarsely, stumbling after the small stretcher. The alpha gave a sharp nod to the healers. "Everything he needs. Give it. Spare no effort." Inside the sterile room, she sank into the chair by the pup's bedside, her hands shaking as she reached out to brush the boy's matted hair from his forehead. Her heart ached at the sight of him hooked to tubes and needles, his small body fighting against shadows of pain. "He's not mine," she reminded herself, yet her chest tightened as though he were carved from her very soul. If no one else would fight for him, she would. If no one else stayed, she would sit here until he opened his eyes. "If you're his father," she murmured softly, almost to herself, "then I'll let him go when he says it. Until then, he's mine to protect." The alpha stood silently at the doorway, his dark eyes unreadable as he watched her. No one had ever spoken to him like that. No one had ever dared. Yet he felt no insult, no rage, only a growing certainty that this fragile girl was the reason his son had survived this long. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy with exhaustion, and before she could resist, her body gave in. The last thing she felt was the heat of the boy's small hand under hers. When she awoke, the world was softer. Warm sunlight filtered through the curtains, and for a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the sharp tug on her wrist reminded her. A line of tubing was attached to her hand, a bag of serum slowly dripping life back into her veins. Her gaze darted to the bed beside her. Relief washed through her so strong it stole her breath. The pup's eyes were open, dull, tired, but open. His lips curved faintly into a small, weak smile as they met hers. You? His voice was raspy, fragile as wind. You stayed. Tears welled in her eyes, burning hot as she nodded. I promised, didn't I? That smile, fragile but pure, was enough to shatter the invisible wall inside the Alpha's chest. Standing a few feet away, he clenched his fist to steady himself. His son was alive. Against all odds, against the lies he had been fed about the boy's death, his pup was here, alive, breathing, and smiling at an Omega rogue who refused to bow to him. From that moment, the Alpha knew with chilling clarity. If he wanted his son safe, he needed her by his side. She wasn't strong, not in the way warriors were. She wasn't powerful, not in the way leaders demanded. But her defiance, her stubborn courage, and the unshakable devotion she had shown to a child not her own, that was a strength his son could not live without. 3 days passed. The healers declared both she and the boy stable, though they insisted on rest. By the Alpha's order, no one disturbed them. Not a single warrior questioned her presence, though whispers carried through the pack like wildfire. A rogue Omega had not only entered their lands, but had been kept under their Alpha's protection. On the 3rd morning, the Alpha himself appeared at her bedside. His presence filled the room, commanding yet strangely calm. It's time, he said simply. Her brows furrowed. Time for what? For you to come with me. Fear prickled her skin, but his tone was not threatening. It was resolute. As 2 guards stepped forward, she bristled, her wolf growling weakly inside her. The Alpha lifted a hand, halting them. No chains. No force. His gaze settled on hers. You've earned at least that much. Her lips parted, confusion flooding her. She had expected punishment, maybe exile, maybe worse. Instead, he offered his hand, not as Alpha to Omega, but as a father who recognized the woman who had saved his child. Unsteady, she rose, glancing once more at the boy who slept peacefully under warm blankets. She brushed a kiss to his forehead, then turned toward the Alpha. Her steps were slow, but this time not from weakness. This time, they were deliberate, each one carrying her closer to a destiny she hadn't chosen, but one she could no longer avoid. The path out of the medical wing was lined with watchful eyes, but she kept her gaze forward. Whatever waited at the end of this walk, she would face it. For herself, for the boy. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel completely alone. Chapter 5. 2 paths. The pack house loomed before her, a towering structure of stone and timber that seemed to hum with authority. She had never dared to step inside such a place before. Omegas like her weren't allowed to walk the polished floors of Alphas and Lunas. Yet here she was, escorted through the grand doors, her heart hammering against her ribs. The Alpha walked beside her, silent but steady, his presence enough to silence even the whispers of his pack members watching from the shadows. Every step she took echoed louder in her ears, like she was being led to judgment, or perhaps to freedom. At the end of the hall, he pushed open the heavy double doors to his office. The room was vast, lined with shelves of leather-bound books and maps of territories stretching across the walls. A massive desk stood in the center, papers scattered across its surface. But it wasn't the desk that caught her attention. It was the view, the wide windows behind it opening to the forest, where the sun broke through in golden shards. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair opposite his. Her legs trembled, but she obeyed, sinking into the cushioned seat. She kept her eyes lowered, her wolf pressing close to her skin, cautious. She had expected anger, punishment, maybe chains. Instead, the Alpha leaned back in his chair, studying her with an unreadable expression. Finally, he spoke. You've done something that no one else has. You saved my son. You fought for his life even when you had nothing to gain from it. For that, you've earned my respect and my gratitude." Her throat tightened. Respect? Gratitude? These were words she had never once heard directed at her. "But gratitude alone is not enough," he continued, his voice calm, deep. "You need choices, real choices, and that's why I've brought you here." Her eyes flickered up, startled. Choices? Omegas didn't get choices. He folded his hands together, his gaze steady on hers. "I'm giving you two paths. The first, you leave. My son has already confirmed with his own words that I am his father. You have fulfilled your promise to him and to me. If you choose this, I will not hold you here against your will. You will be free. More than that, I will see to it that you are rewarded generously for what you've done. I'll send you anywhere you wish, to any territory, to any pack. You will never again have to run like a rogue or live in fear." Her heart stuttered in her chest. Freedom, safety. It sounded almost too good to be true. But then his voice shifted, lower, heavier, as though the second path weighed more. "The other option. You stay. Stay here, in this pack, under my protection. Stay not for me, but for my son. You've already proven you will fight for him as if he were your own. And he needs that. He needs you." Her lips parted, but no words came. The Alpha leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk, eyes dark with something she couldn't name. "If you choose to stay, you will never again be called rogue. You will not be a slave, or a breeder, or less than anyone. You will have a place here, a safe life. A life where you can choose who you are, what you wish to do, so long as you stay by his side. You would be his savior, his protector, perhaps even the mother figure he has been denied." Her chest ached, torn between disbelief and a strange, fragile hope. She searched his face, looking for the trap, the hidden cruelty. But all she found was a tired honesty in his eyes, as though he had already lost too much and would not risk losing again. When she stayed silent, he continued, his voice rougher now. "You need to understand one thing. My son's mother, my first wife, was not my true mate. The council forced the union for bloodlines, for heirs. I did as my duty demanded. But she—" His jaw tightened, his hands curling into fists. "She never wanted him. She left after his birth, ran with her lover. She abandoned him. And when my son was stolen from me months ago, I thought I had lost everything. I swore I would never again let a woman close enough to betray us." He paused, his eyes flickering away as if the words were heavier than he meant them to be. Then he looked at her again. "And yet here you are, a stranger, a weak Omega, and still you chose my son's life over your own." The room was quiet, so quiet she could hear her own uneven breaths. "I will not force you," he said firmly. "You have earned the right to choose. Leave, and you will have freedom. Stay, and you will have safety, purpose, and protection. Both are yours to take." Her hands trembled in her lap. She had dreamed of freedom her entire life, dreamed of escaping the cruelty of her pack, of leaving behind the chains of her rank. But when she closed her eyes, she saw the boy's fragile smile, the way his tiny hand had clung to hers, the way his eyes had lit up when she promised she would stay. Her wolf stirred, restless. For the first time, the thought of freedom didn't feel like enough. The Alpha's voice cut through her thoughts, gentler now. "I will give you time to decide. No one will pressure you. Whatever choice you make, I will honor it." She swallowed hard, her throat dry, her heart caught between fear and something she didn't dare name. Two paths lay before her, the freedom she had always longed for, or the bond she had never expected to find. And though her lips remained silent, her heart whispered the truth. One of those paths was already pulling her harder than the other. Chapter 6. The Second Chance. Bond. The 3 months that followed seemed like a dream she never dared to hope for. Every dawn began the same way, tiny footsteps racing down the hall, the sound of a child's laughter, and his little hands tugging at her arm until she opened her eyes. He demanded her attention with all the insistence of a pup who knew he was loved beyond measure, and she gave it freely. She played with him, chased him through the pack house, told him stories by the fire as he drifted to sleep. In those moments, she forgot the scars of her past. Life was not cruel anymore. Life was simple, even joyful. Around her, the pack began to change too. Some ignored her as they always had. Some gave polite nods, and others whispered with envy, wishing they had been the one to be so close to their alpha's son. But she didn't care for whispers or envy. The boy was her world. Protecting him was her purpose. What she did not notice, or perhaps refused to let herself notice, was the way the alpha's gaze had begun to linger. To the pack, he was still the unshakable, untouchable ruler. Fierce, merciless, feared. A man who had no need for warmth or softness. But behind closed doors, when no one else was watching, he saw her for what she truly was. He saw the way her golden curls shimmered in the sunlight when she bent down to scoop up his son. He saw the unguarded laughter that slipped from her lips when she let herself forget her past. He saw the way she kissed the boy's forehead and whispered promises of safety, as though the child were her own flesh and blood. And each time, his chest tightened. Gratitude was no longer enough to explain it. Something inside him pulled toward her, demanded her presence. He found himself listening for her voice outside his office walls, straining for the sound of laughter in the halls. He found himself distracted, restless, longing for something he could not yet name, until the day he called her into his office. "You cannot remain here without ties," he told her, his voice even, though something stormed beneath it. "You must join this pack properly." Her hands trembled slightly, but she nodded. She understood the rules. Rogues and outsiders could not remain within a pack unless the bond was sealed in blood. It was the law of wolves. She bared her wrist, and he did the same. When their blood mingled, her fragile offering against his powerful strength, something neither of them expected ignited. The world fell silent. The air thickened, and then the bond roared to life. Her gasp mirrored his as realization struck like lightning. The Omega the world had mocked, the girl who had been rejected and abandoned, was his fated mate, his second chance. Her heart thundered in her chest. For months she had buried her feelings for him deep inside. She had grown to love him in silence, for his quiet generosity, for his protection, for the way he respected her even when he didn't have to. But she had never believed she was worthy of showing him that love. Now the bond itself proved what her heart already knew. Tears burned at her lashes, but this time they were tears of joy. The alpha reached for her, his eyes fierce yet tender. "You are mine," he said, his voice breaking the silence like a vow etched in stone. "I will never be cruel to you. I will never betray you. I will never let you shed another tear. And if you wish it, I will take revenge for the alpha who broke your heart." Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady as she answered. "I accept you, not because of what you promise, but because I already love the man you are. I accept to be your mate. I accept to be your Luna. And I promise I will care for your son, as if he were always my own." Those words shattered the last of his restraint. The way she spoke of loving him, the way she vowed to protect his child, It tore down every wall he had built around himself. Hunger crashed over him, raw and undeniable. Possessiveness surged through every vein, fierce and unyielding. He had felt it for 3 months, but now fate had bound it in blood. Before she could say another word, he crashed his lips onto hers. The kiss was desperate. Years of loneliness, months of silent longing, and the sudden storm of fate poured into it. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that burned through him, yet beneath the fire was tenderness, a silent plea for her to understand the promises he could not yet speak. She melted against him, fragile and trembling, but there was no fear in her touch. Only trust, only love. His kiss was full of promises, of protection, of loyalty, of forever. And all he could think as he held her was what he would do next to make her truly his. To cherish this fragile, beautiful girl who had survived so much pain, and to give her the happiness she had never known. For the first time in years, the Alpha was no longer just a ruler. He was a man in love, and she, his fated mate, his Luna, was the only thing that mattered.